alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a returning guest, not a returning guest, a new guest to the podcast, jeez. Thorsten Nesch, welcome to the show. It feels like he's a returning guest because we had some technical difficulties.
Thanks for having me. Lots of laughs so far. That's great.
well, you know, you gotta get your laughs somewhere, right? So, Thorsten, what sort of stuff do you write, and what have you got out there, in the world right now?
Yeah, what kind of stuff? So I'm bilingual. I write in German and English. I switched to English a couple of years ago. My German novels are also available in English. And my German novels in Germany, I'm a traditionally published and award-winning author. And the novels I read in schools between Denmark and Italy. And in one German province, they have it now mandatory that my drone pilot, it's called, the drone pilot, is a mandatory read if you want to do the high school exam, in German language arts, and in English it's 1984, so I'm kind of thrilled.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's great. Wow, that's some auspicious place to be, really. And you didn't even have to wait till you didn't have to wait like 80 years for like 90.
I feel like 80 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never know who I'm going to talk to most of the time when I get to this show. And so it's always incredible to hear about someone so accomplished, honestly. I mean, yeah, but so with this story, this drone pilot story, what's that about? I
had the idea because my novels I read in schools. I did a lot of readings throughout Europe. So I was in Switzerland, and it was, of course, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I saw my first drone in action, and I didn't see the pilot, and that was a very uncomfortable feeling. And I was like, well, what's this? Am I observed? Who is it observing? And this was Switzerland. That was a peaceful country. So how must that feel if you're in some crisis and stuff? So, and that idea stuck with me. And then I felt like, how could you train drone pilots? And then I just felt like maybe there's an online game where companies train kids to become drone pilot, and that's your big win at the end. And that was basically the baseline for the novel. Yeah, and then I wrote that one. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So is that kind of science fiction, or is it more just modern fiction?
It's funny, like during my research and my writing, first I was like, that's like 50 years in there, and then the time went closer and closer with what I found out is technically possible. It was back then already. So it's called near fiction. And this one is not available actually in English. So.
Oh, well then maybe we should talk about something else, because this show is of course in English.
Yeah.
So what have you got out in English right now? I mean, though that does sound fascinating, let me just say.
Yeah.
Interesting idea there.
So just right now, I'm about to finish a novel that takes place in 2112. So that is a more science fiction or dystopian social fiction, where I got the grant, a stipendium from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts to write it over a year. So that was a great way to write a novel when you have a financial backing somehow. Yeah. So and I documented the writing process on my blog on my homepage. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I mean, so the process there. Did you find logging the process at all ever difficult? Because I've tried to keep when I try to even keep track of writing one of my books, I'm like, it's just another chore to do at the end of the day,
Yeah, I started out a little bit too ambitious. As a weekly blog post, I didn't live up to that. That petered out pretty fast. And but monthly, I do it sometimes twice a month when there is something. Especially during the editing process, it can become a little monotonous for the possible reader. Or I do also short videos, like when I show stuff But that is harder to document. It was more juicy when I went out. So it takes place in Lethbridge. That's a city where I'm living in Canada, in Alberta, Lethbridge. So it takes place here. So I took the camera out and filmed the location. So that is fun, right? And also for the viewer. But like in the editing, if you're like hitting like the 3-4 months of editing, I kind of boiled it down a little bit, but it's still there and still going.
Yeah. So when you approach writing the book, there's always some basic things you got to do, right? And it sounds like you've kind of got this science fiction light, at least with those stories we've talked about so far. You know, like very near future science fiction, which is, well, I mean, 2112 isn't that near future to me. It sounds like a long way off, but I mean, it's a future I'm not going to see, so it seems like pretty far off to me. Unless something should drastically change in human lifespan. But I mean, I can't even imagine. But what? And I write fantasy. You'd think I would be able to. So anyway, how do you approach writing a book just in general? I guess do you discover the book? Do you do outlines? You know, that kind of thing. That's the kind of the baseline question here.
Yeah, so I have to start out with that I'm basically the nightmare of my publishing houses because I'm not a genre writer. It's really, we talk now about the 2 science fiction that I wrote. Otherwise, I have like...
Well, yeah, I mean, I twigged to that stuff, yeah.
You know, but the process, how I come about like stories is pretty much the same, that I have an idea and then it lingers and then I start collecting ideas that go with it. And... before I start a novel, it can be between 2 and 15 years of collecting and forming this, the idea. And this doesn't mean I write treatments or whatever. You ask like, how do I do this? I do an outline that basically fits on one page, on one sheet of paper. I just do a timeline and write with pencil little things. I can erase them when they don't fit anymore. I carry that around with me. I photocopy it to make, backups and work with those and stuff. And just when I feel I have the tone, the voice, I can smell and I know where it's going. I don't need the nitty details. I leave that for the writing. That's fun to write, to be in the moment. But I never had the luxury to just I start a novel and see where it goes because you have all these publishers and they have expectations and stuff. What you pitch. But even before I had jobs, I mean, I still have a job, a part-time job, right? But I started out like working, and then you have just an hour here every day, an hour there, and I figured pretty fast I don't want to waste a year with a novel that I don't finish, for example. And then I started basically, okay, is this worthwhile? Think it through, right? And then once then I was flying. So
no, that's great. I mean, and being methodical, I mean, that's obviously quite different than how I roll. But I mean, when the listeners probably already will be tired of hearing this, but like this week I started a new book, right? So I started with premise day that turned into the whole week basically. But originally it was supposed to be I write the book in a week. It's to put things in perspective with how fast it goes. I tend to go like I try to go at pulp speed, right? Like Dean Wesley Smith says. Yeah. But it's I'm not very good at it yet. I'm still learning how to be consistent at that rate of 10 or 20,000 words a day, something like that. But it's not. I mean, there's nothing wrong with writing fast or slow, obviously, or slower. I'm not saying you're slow, obviously, but in more methodical pace, or a more deliberate story development, because I discover my story as I go too, mostly. Okay. So what you're saying about you've got your sheet of paper with your blueprint on it, and that to me really rings true to me actually, because I do when I said I had premise day, I spent a bunch of time making notes for this fantasy setting and all these characters and stuff, and then that's kind of the foundation, and I just jump off of there and see where the story takes me. Basically, I have an idea of what's going to happen because I know what characters are going to have friction with each other and stuff. So I know what the main conflict is going to be, kind of as well. And then I just go. Yeah. And that's the idea anyway. Totally... I'm not great at it, but that's the idea.
No, and I always say there are great novels written this way, right? Like we all know that you just set off and set sail and get going. And I just from my end, I felt like I didn't feel, especially in the early days, I didn't have that luxury because I'm doing like 2 or 3 jobs and it was literally an hour here. Or I had then, in 5 months from now, I probably have 2 months off because now I'm working 60 hours a week, right? And then it was basically planning to that point and then boom, sit down, right? And that's what you do, 10 hours a day over the 6-8 weeks. So and then, but I knew where I was going. Yeah, so.
No, that's also that. Again, I've had that experience as well. I mean, the one time when I was a freshman in college, first year in college, I got so sick after about January. I was so sick of not writing. It was like February or March. It's about it's probably been 10 years now. No, 12, 13 years, something like that since this happened. But I took a weekend. I took just Saturday, and I said I'm going to see how many words I can write today. Because I had the day off, right? So I was like, okay, I'll make plans. I made plans 2 days in advance, and I wrote about 12,000 words on Saturday. It's the first time I've done that many in a day. And you're right, it took like 10 hours. Now it wouldn't take me quite that long, but it's whatever experience it teaches you many things.
Do you type or you use speech recognition as well?
I've done both. I got much faster after I did speech recognition for a while, and then I switched back to typing.
Yeah,
but at the time I was typing.
Yeah. So I probably from my 14 novels, 10 I did with speech recognition. But what I found out, I still write the same pace.
Yes,
I'm not faster or slow. I'm still like, yeah, no, that's fine. I can just lie down.
Which can be very nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Or walk around in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what I would dictate. The novels I've dictated 3 or 4. Forget exactly how many. Because not most of them didn't come out, right? I dictated probably 500,000 words in between 2019 and 2021.
Did it ever happen to you that you talk to a person and you say comma and?
I never had that issue. I did want to though. I wanted to, but I caught myself.
It happened with a child of mine on the way home. I was still in my world.
Comma. Oh, close quote.
Yeah. You looked at me quite puzzled.
Yes, I mean, dictation is quite useful. I'm very sloppy at it. I mean, I can do 6,000 or 7,000 words in an hour with dictation, but it's so messy then that it takes 5 to 10 times longer to clean it up as it would if I just typed that. But to type it would take 3 hours. But then you see, it's like, okay, so how it's all just a numbers game at that point. That's why I switched back to typing. It's a little quicker overall. Because my draft comes out pretty clean when I type, and it comes out as gobbledygook if I dictate. At least if I go with that pace, I think I could dictate 2,000 words an hour, like about the rate I type, and it would be relatively easy to fix it. But I love going fast, so I can't hold myself back when I'm dictating.
And if that's where you roll, that's a freedom you have as an artist, right? Like that's your way to work. Yeah. So
anyway, I like to feel the story moving under me, kind of thing. I kind of like to go, and I don't know why that is. I guess it's probably just a relic of how I learned to write, and I'm kind of curious with this about you, because we do come from different generations. I think it's safe to say, and when I started out, I listened to all these podcasts and stuff like The Secrets with Michael Stackpole and Murray Lafferty's I Should Be Writing, a bunch of these other ones. And the common thread in a lot of these was that you can't write for quality on the first draft. So so for a decade, when I basically didn't edit much, and I just wrote novel after novel after novel without looking back. Basically, it didn't actually teach me as much as I was hoping it would, but it taught me a lot. But at that point, that's how I started out, and so I classified everything by just how fast I could get the book done. That was basically the difference, because I didn't judge them by quality. Yeah. So that's why I kind of got to where I am now, as far as having a ton of trunked novels that probably aren't even worth looking at because they were written when I was a teenager.
Oh well, yeah, but it's practice, right? Like
exactly.
Everything. I believe in the 10,000 hours and of doing stuff and becoming sufficient and professional with it. It's even to the point where I say, like, my desk, I don't want to have that somebody throws the stuff on my desk every day in the morning and I have to sift through to find something. No, over all the years, I know if I grab here, I don't even have to look for the pencil if I need one. Like that is like, yeah. So and the same with typing and narration and typing a novel and saving it, like backupping, do your backups and all this. The routines. Any routine frees up space for creativity.
That's a really good point. I have a really hard time keeping a routine. That's another thing people should know about me, that I don't know if I don't go into that as much. But I don't really have a routine for writing, and that's probably been what's been hurting me lately the most. I try to have a routine, like I have a routine for the morning, but then when it comes to actually writing words, it's a crapshoot.
Okay.
Even though I write a lot. I write a lot. It's people say, but I used to write a lot more. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, when it comes to your books, though, you say you mostly don't write science fiction. So what are most of your books?
It's always for me. It's like the best idea counts, right? Like, and I know I never, for example, had in my mind, never ever, I would write a young adult fiction novel, right? And then I had a great idea, and it didn't work. And I tried it with students, with retirees, with adults, and then all of a sudden I had this idea: what if this happens to two 15-year-olds, right? And all of a sudden the curtain opened, and I was like, I never read even a young adult fiction at that time, right? I don't even know what's out there.
You need to do some reading,
you know?
Get some research in there. Yeah.
So, then I chose 20 novels that I just digested, and I thought like, maybe I give it a shot. And that book was then nominated as Best German Debut. And I sold the film rights before I sold the book rights, actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you killed it because there's something to be said there, definitely, for waiting or, for looking for the right match.
Yeah.
Matching the right concepts together really makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, and that is really a great example because I really jumped into like a genre I've never even read something before about it, and I must say the freedom is, if you say fantasy, I think you have also more freedom in young adult fiction, especially in German. It feels like if you go into the serious literature, the rail gets really small, like, and you can't experiment so much, although, but that's a different story. But that was the best decision I ever made as a writer, to just go with a gut feeling that that's the best story and that's what it means. Yeah.
You got to listen to your gut. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a book that's just been sitting dead in the water, and then I do just examine the one thing about this scene and say, like, oh, this actually sucks and I hate it, and that's why I'm not going to write this part. And so I'd either skip that part or I would just decide something else happened there. Yeah. Because and when I mean sucks, I meant like, this isn't going to work. This is going to hurt the book. It's going to make the book not work if I write this thing that I had planned, or that I just kind of gotten to assume that I was going to put there. And so many times I've just, okay, that doesn't work. Well, we're going to do something completely different then. And sometimes it really does work. And then other times I've noticed that if I push through a book and I don't pay attention, this has happened the second novel I dictated, actually. Which is like 2020, more or less. I dictated this, and actually, it happened. No, it was actually the end of 2019. So I was dictating in the last quarter of 2019 the sequel to one of my epic fantasy novels, and that book didn't turn out as a book that I wanted. So I had to rewrite it completely from scratch again. I did a different sequel that had the same title as the first one, but I had 80,000 words dictated, and I'm like, I don't think this is even worth editing. And making that kind of call is kind of difficult. It's difficult, obviously. It was more difficult because 80,000 words represents about 20 hours of dictation for me at the time. Yeah. But it's not easy to do, right? It took months to do that.
I just had one.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I just had one once where that happened, where I did a major switch after planning, right? Like after I got it down, I sit down, I start the novel, and then 50 pages in, I was like, the perspective doesn't really feel right. And then I had the first person, and then I switched to the third, and that was it. And then I wrote that novel. But I had to rewrite. But that was the only time where I had to change something major. Yeah. That
actually did happen to me. And that sort of thing has happened to me many times. I've written many chunks of books that I'm like, this is just not going to work, or I'm going to come back to this later. Is usually how I think of it, and I'll start something new. Mm-hmm. But I haven't done that in a while. Actually, I haven't put down a book that's like, this is just not done and not ready. Or like I didn't throw up my hands and say, I don't know these characters. The last time I did that was 5 or 6 years ago.
And I think that comes with the experience of writing a lot. That it happens less and less.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've actually written quite a lot too. Honestly, I over a longer time frame, perhaps, or a different time frame.
Yeah.
But you've got a bunch of books out there, and I gotta say, is it ever challenging for you to to just keep grinding? Because I would find it difficult personally to be working on the same book. I mean, I've done it, but to work on the same book when I know it's going to take a year or more, it would be really difficult for me.
Yeah. I think I don't know. It might be my personality thing. I remember me as a child. I was also the child that let's say Lego. Let's say Lego. I do a Lego airport, and then it wasn't done for me in the afternoon. It was done in 2 weeks. What is kind of a lifespan as a child? And I insisted always on, I want to keep this up. I don't want to clean up. I still haven't finished my game, right? And other kids weren't that way. So I'm always like in this long haul. Although the writing process, like I said, the first version, once I'm starting writing, the first version is basically the novel. I just do proofreading.
Okay. So you take your time and get it right the first time.
Yeah. I had the discussion with an editor, and she said, like, this is not a second version of anything. You just proofread it, right? But it is done, So I always felt like, oh, this is version 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, but it isn't actually. And I have to admit to myself, it's not. I cull out chunks of a novel or write 50 pages somewhere. No, it's just tweaking here, tweaking there, and then it is done. And usually that version is written in 2 months. So it just takes the planning phase, and then this one was different, like a different beast that it kind of really spread out over a year now. But I also have 3 kids, and I have a part-time job, and I also need to relax once.
It happens, yeah. I mean, you need to relax. It's something I should take to heart as well. Yeah, I mean, and I think it actually goes without saying though that, and I'm sorry, I misrepresented how long it takes to write your books. I guess I heard a year, and I assumed that was normal, but hey, I mean, it takes a long time but all that's just the tip of the spear. Those 2 months are like, you've got all this stuff, and then you just hammer it out. Basically, you got it in your mind or ready to go. Yeah.
I had writers' residencies, for example, in a month, and then I wrote the novel Growler. It's a horror novel.
Oh, is it about those bears?
Yeah, it's like half grizzly, half polar bear.
Yeah,
and it was it's kind of an environmental. It takes place in the Yukon at the gold claim, where like one of those bears getting hungry, and it's very Stephen Kingish, right?
Sounds kind of like Jaws, except with a bear.
Yeah. Very good. Was a reference book. Was definitely a reference book. Yeah, I think there's also a reference to Jaws in there, as far as I remember. And Charles Kahlenberg did an awesome audiobook for Audible. Like, he's an American actor, and he read it. It's just fantastic. Was, and I wrote it in 4 weeks. But it took 2 years to plan, right? Before,
of course. Yeah. But you're not doing. I mean, let me just assume. I'm not going to assume this, but would I be correct in saying that you're not spending 24 hours a day, or you're not spending the majority of your work time in those 2 years planning the book, or is that true?
It is. Yes and no. It's so for 10 years I was a full-time author, like, because it paid all the bills, and I didn't need any other side gigs and stuff. So that was a very luxury position to be in. However, I limited myself to 32 hours a week to work, because my kids were little, and I really, 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 really wanted to be there, and it was really fun, and I'm not regretting anything of that.
It's an important time.
Yeah, and exactly, and it is like when the development. It's not like I sit down a day and try to think of the, let's say, the protagonist of Growler. It's more like I go for a walk, or I go grocery shopping, and then it's in the back of my mind, the next novel, right, that is on the horizon. And then it's like, exactly, he's coming from Vancouver, and he's laid off as a construction worker there. So, and then I write that down on that little sheet I have with me.
Oh, yeah.
That's it, right? And then usually I just have one sheet on me, because I work on one novel, and the next one is kind of on the horizon. And that's basically where I'm again now. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And that actually that's very similar to what it was. I think How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy, the book by Orson Scott Card. He wrote about that in that. That's a book. It's a nonfiction book about writing.
Yeah.
And he mentioned something like that in that book, I believe. It's been a long time since I read it. I lent it to a friend after college, and I've never gotten it back. That's Minnesota for you. Anyway, it's all good. But it was that that kind of, you have this idea, and it gets refined and built up over time. And ideas. We've probably spent enough time on that for one show, but we're actually running out of time, unfortunately.
Oh, already?
The show runs fast. It runs short. Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to ask you quick, though, about just in general, your approach to fiction sounds fairly organic. So I wanted to, you're growing something. You're growing this book gradually, accumulating details, that kind of stuff. Is there any point at which you feel like you're creating something artificial, like in a bad way? And if so, would that cause you to pause?
Artificial, yeah. I mean,
rethink yourself.
Yeah. There might be moments. The more details come to a story in the development phase. Let's say there are 3 new ones, and those 3 new ones oppose one that is already there. Right? If this person has these character traits, 1, 2, 3, the 4th one doesn't make sense anymore. Like that person, okay. Those things. So it goes to that effect where it's like, if he or she likes this, then it would be unlikely to be that, or it would look artificial. It would be like, because I want it so. But I like to avoid it. And I'm glad my readers always come back. I just wrote that in another interview. It's like they feel like certain characters, they know those characters. They even say like, no, this is Miss So-and-so. And I'm like, no, it's fictional. But I had this long time where I basically observed people. As a child, I was more on the quieter side. So, you just observe how people react, how they talk. Then I had all these different jobs, in a pub, pizza delivery, all these different things where you meet different people. And for me, I say you have to be interested in people if you want to write about people. So, I like that.
Yeah, that sounds like good advice to me. And I had this. Growing up autistic, I had to learn a lot about. It took me a long time to learn how to learn how to get used to people, even to get to know people.
Oh, I bet.
But I think it does kind of give me something of an advantage over people who just automatically pick things up, though. Because I had to think all that stuff through. I had to learn how to socially learn and understand what people are thinking. So it becomes easier to write about them as a result.
And every different perspective. That's why to you, not to be somebody else, but to utilize your own perspective for me. When it's like, this is my perspective on life. Can I write about X? Or am I totally out of water there, right? And having your perspective, you do this your way instead of trying to copy, hopefully, somebody. Because, in the beginning, I did it on purpose. Because I wanted to know why Stephen King works on a page, and me not was 16 years old.
Yeah, it happens. But anyway, that's how it goes. You and I've copied story concepts occasionally when I was younger. I've done stuff like that. And I think being afraid to be don't be afraid to not be original, especially when you're starting out. It is generally good advice. Because if you're trying to write something brand new, but you're brand new. It almost always turned out to be a mess if you don't know what the basics of the genre or the form you're working with is. Yeah. At least for me, I'm saying it turned out to be a mess for me. I'm sure somebody's knocked it out of the park with the first try, but I think you're rolling the dice, and the odds aren't great if you do that.
The air gets thin if you want to knock it out of the ballpark when you're 19 as a writer.
Oh yeah, I hear that. So, Thorsten, where can people find your work online, and what sort of stuff have you got? English or German, whatever.
Yeah, it's both on the homepage. I have it clearly marked as German, English, and like novels, and I also do music. So you find some music, photography. I do street photography, black and white, and also the blog about the novel that I'm currently writing, where like a bunch of blog posts about writing, about editing, and my approach in general to writing.
Nice. What's the website URL again?
Yeah, it's www.thorsten Nesch, THORSTENNESCH.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Thorsten. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
As for this podcast, people, you can find us at mentalcellarpublications.com. That's cellar with a C, so a basement, mental basement. I should have called it that. But anyway, you can also find all my books at timniedereder.com/books. Thanks for listening, everybody. And I do want to do a brief kind of PSA here at the end here, because I mean, honestly, I was having a pretty lousy day. Time note this: I was having a pretty lousy day at the day of recording. Feeling a lot better now. And one thing I've got to say, so thanks again, Thorsten. But I've got to say is, when you feel like there's nothing to look forward to, you got to keep looking. Your day can turn around, folks. It sure can. So thanks for listening, everybody. Stay safe, stay alert to how you're feeling out there, and thanks for listening once again, and take it easy. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
That tears it.